Yes. Great.
Thank you. Oh, look, I'm color coordinated with the background. So I was thinking about what to talk about, and I was, just before coming here, I was over at my stepmom, Kathy Haas Riley, at her house, and we were making cards. She has received a number of condolence cards about my dad's passing, which happened a couple of months ago or so. And she is one of those people who will respond to every single card. And so I spent like 2 hours cutting cardstock and helping her make cards so that she can respond to the 180 condolence cards that she got. It's like I can't even imagine. But I asked her, "Are you coming to hear my talk?" And make 3 people. But she said, "No, I'm not coming because it will be too upsetting to me." And I did not understand that. I really did not understand that. But it made me think that if I tell the story of being in a Baba family from my earliest memories, it will necessarily include description of my family members that may not fit with the picture many people currently have of my dad. And so I wanted to say all that because I do not have a desire to make people feel bad when I put forward a picture of, for example, my dad that doesn't fit at all with the person you might know that he was in the later part of his life. And if it does cause you any problem, I don't care at all. And having said that, my parents, and I learned this just in the last few years, my parents were dating while my dad was engaged to another woman. And that woman was from Woodstock and came from a family that his family knew, and she was well liked, and everyone thought that that would be a very good match. And my dad and my mom started dating, and I think it was a rather lusty thing. My dad saw my mom in a bikini at a swimming hole and swam towards that bikini. So he was very much attracted to her, and they were both going to school in Manhattan. And so the swimming hole was not in Manhattan, obviously. It was up in Woodstock. But they realized that they were both going to school in Manhattan, and they reconnected and they started dating. And my dad told me, because I said, "Well, why didn't you get engaged? Why didn't you get married to that woman you were engaged with? How come you were screwing around on her?" And my dad said, "Because of Meher Baba." And he then told me that at that time, God Speaks had just come out. So it's appropriate that we just watched that thing on the conclusion of God Speaks. God Speaks had just come out, and I think it was Weiser's bookstore in Manhattan. My parents were living together in Manhattan, or dating at least, I think. Yeah, they were dating. My dad saw God Speaks, took it, and showed it to my mom. And the two of them were on page. This is great. Wow. And my dad showed it to the woman he was engaged to, and she went, huh? And it was because of my mom's receptivity to Meher Baba that my dad decided to continue dating her and break off his engagement. This is what he told me. And it was the first time I'd ever heard this, like just, I would say 3 or 4 years ago. So they then got pregnant and then got married and had me. So Meher Baba's been a significant factor in how I came about and my whole life. So at that time, my mom and her sister, my Aunt Maya Andro, was Maya Traver, were both physical therapists who were graduating from Columbia Medical School in Manhattan. And Adele Walken was very good friends with my Aunt Maya. And Adele Walken, as you may or may not know, was a close follower of Meher Baba's and was the caretaker of Norina Machabelli, who was in decline. Let's just say she was in decline at that point in her life. And Norina Machabelli died in 1957. So she was living in Yukon Dunes, and Adele, after Norina Machabelli's death, Adele went back to New York City. So she and my Aunt Maya were very good friends, and through a series of events, my parents became involved with the New York Baba group, of which Harry Canmore was a significant figure. Phyllis Frederick was also a part of that group. And so Adele Walken had known me, I like to say, ever since I was a bump. And it touches me greatly to say that I was there when she died. So I'm so grateful to Adele for having been there for my whole life, and that I could have been there at her end. Anyway, I mean, it's part of my life. Part of my life growing up in a Baba family. So some of these people who you all might know as, oh, that Adele, she was so kind of, these people meant so much to me. And so many of them are gone. And people now in the Baba community just don't even have any memory of them at all, any knowledge of them at all. Anyway, so we moved, my family moved, myself, my mom, and my dad moved up to, back up to Woodstock because married life with a child was too much for them. They were not the kind of folks that were kind of on track for jobs or careers. Oh, Fresh Day, thank you. You're so sweet. Thank you so much. They were not those kinds of people at all. They had their head in the clouds. They were smoking pot, and they were talking about esoteric things and reading about Eastern masters and attending meetings about him. So these were not people who were, networking for their career. Having a little baby just wasn't conducive for career at that time for a woman, certainly. And my dad was, with an art degree, was ill-equipped to take on the full responsibility of supporting a family. What were they thinking? Anyway, they moved back up to Woodstock and quite literally bounced around for a lot of years trying to figure out what to do, how to make a living. We lived in my grandmother's garage for a year and lived in I'm just going to say it, a shack that had no running water, an outhouse. These are people with a master's degree, so there was something wrong. There was something going on there that was like not right. They just couldn't get a grip on how to live in the world and have a career and, you know, do the things that average people did. And so there was, you know, difficulty. I mean, this is a difficult situation. Then I've said it before. My mom finally said, you know, we need to get a house. We need to like get a house and like have our own place. And she said, we need to build a house. And my dad said, well, I don't know how to build a house. And so my mom said, I'm going to go to the library and I'm going to get a book about it and we're going to read that book. And so she went to the library, got a book about it. They read that book and they built a room and they called it a house. And they put cardboard boxes that they got at the supermarket as insulation. I mean, to say that that was against code, like home building codes were invented so people wouldn't do that. You know? So it was like the house was a fire trap. Anyway, they did what they could. They just tried to figure it out. And literally, in the span of about 8 months, with 3 hand saws, no electricity, they built a house. 3 hand saws. And there was a log that they had cut down that was the main beam in this room, and the thing was still growing. I remember like sap dropping down on my nose and going like, and there was sap there, and there was a little like sprig growing out of the tree up there, you know, and I remember looking at it going like, oh, that's nice. So they were just holding it together. But throughout this, they were focused on Meher Baba. And everyone who knew them knew that they were involved with Meher Baba and was invited to come to read the discourses, because there were like, you know, what, 5 books at that time on Meher Baba. I mean, that's all there was. It was God Speaks, the discourses, you know, what else? I think God Man had come out.
Stay with God.
Stay with God, yeah, there were a few. A handful. And, you know, they would have meetings and they would read and discuss the discourses, or God Speaks, and they would try and figure it out, you know. So my memory of growing up was very much about Baba's words, very much about getting together and discussing the books written by Meher Baba. That's what I remember. And then, you know, through effort, they bought some land, and in the interim there was an antique store, and then they bought some land and subdivided it. And I mean, the way that they would, I remember my dad figuring out how much he should charge to build someone's house on a napkin. It was like, well, that's going to cost that much, that'll cost that much, that'll cost that much, and we'll put that much in for how much we should make, which was like nothing. So basically, like these custom homes that they made for people, they basically made them for free, because there's never a home built that doesn't have problems, and the builder has to pay for the problems along the way. So they would make, like, literally on a house that they were charging $150,000 to make, they would make like $10,000 on it. Like, they'd make nothing on it. So I remember my whole life, you know, money was always a struggle. And it was because it was not important to them. They were absolutely not oriented to making money. They were oriented to surviving, no question about that. But it's like they couldn't figure out how to get on the treadmill that everyone else was on, who had a life and was making money and was putting money in a savings account and having an IRA, and they couldn't figure that out somehow. I don't know. And I think it was because, looking back, I think it was because they were thinking about Meher Baba all the time. I mean, I don't know why that would be a conflict. I don't think it needs to be a conflict, but there somehow was they just couldn't get it together for that. I don't know why. I don't know why. Now, along that way, backing up a ways, so I am maybe 8, and this is the mid-60s. Yeah, I'm about 8, and it's the mid-60s. And all of a sudden, there start to be people who have heard about Meher Baba, and they somehow got connected with either the New York group or some other group, and either came to the Meher Spiritual Center or got connected with Elizabeth or something. And they would be normal, regular people. People have a job, people have a home, they have a nice family. And Elizabeth and Kitty would, introduce them, show them around the center, and their relationship would be with Kitty and Elizabeth. And then people would come who were crazed drug addicts who had just come out of, a week-long detox or something, and were like just basically drug addicts. And Elizabeth and Kitty couldn't relate. These people were like, what the heck? They didn't know what to do or what to say to these people because they were not normal in any way. And so they would say, oh, you need to go see Tom and Yvonne. You need to go see Tom and Yvonne. So these people who were like, would come to our home, and my mom would cook them dinner, and my dad and mom after dinner would go into our living room, and we'd have a Baba meeting. We'd talk about Meher Baba. I mean, I was a kid, I would just listen. But they would talk about Meher Baba to these crazed drug addicts. And it seemed like there was an unending river of these people. An unending river. There were some people who weren't like that, but largely they were. And they would stay. They would just stay. Like Cindy, what's her name now, Lowe, she stayed for 2 years. Never paid any rent, ate our food, started a business at our house. I mean, it was like, what? And, there was another guy, Bob, can't remember, another guy with flaming red hair, can't remember his name either, but they just stayed for like months at a time, My parents were just like, okay, you're a Baba person, you can stay, And so my impression of Baba people was basically not that great. And these people, I don't think, at that time I didn't really resent them. I saw them as people who were visiting. And we didn't know when they were going to leave. And, variously they would try and engage with my brother and me and like be playful with us and, but largely not. Very self-involved, just very involved with themselves. Many of them went back to drugs. And so that was very much a part of growing up in a Baba family, like that Baba family. And then there was preparation for going on the 1969 Darshan. Oh, and by the way, all my dad's family thought we were just nuts. They loved him, and they loved my brother and me, and they kind of accepted my mom because they, I think, resented her a little bit for maybe the beginning part of their marriage, for that engagement not working out. But yeah, they thought Meher Baba was woohoo, you know. They couldn't quite piece it together, but they loved Tom. So then there was this call to go to India for the 1969 Darshan. And that announcement went out like in November or so, October of 68. You know, people were supposed to prepare for this, which meant getting a passport. You know, my brother and I never had passports, and getting visas and getting inoculated and, you know, getting prepared, getting the money together. And so that was going on. That was like, we were preparing for that. And at that time, when that announcement went out about the 69 Darshan, it was a big push. It was like, let everyone you know about this invitation to this Darshan. This is going to be a big event. There's going to be a, you know, it's really big for at least Americans. And let everybody know. So as a result, my parents let everybody know. And there were people who had only a marginal interest in Meher Baba who ended up going on the 69 Darshan, because that was what we were all doing. I say we, all those people who were going on the Darshan were telling as many people as possible about it. This is a real opportunity. You're going to get to meet the avatar of the age. Come on. And it was during that time that this swell happened of all these people coming to Baba. And I think there was a connection. There was a real push for people to attend that Darshan. And I think a lot of people got that message through different channels. And just a lot of people seemed to become aware of Meher Baba at that time. So anyway, then my dad got a phone call one day, and he cried on the phone. And I had never seen my dad cry. So I was like, what the heck was that phone call? And it was the phone call that he received. I think he received it from Fred Winterfeld, that Meher Baba had died. And this was like, oh my gosh, this was huge. Are we going to go on this big trip? And something else that doesn't get discussed much is Meher Baba's constant referring to the breaking of his silence. And before he died, everyone thought the breaking of his silence would be speaking. Like I said recently to somebody, if I was your neighbor and you kind of saw me, you know, as a normal average person, and then we bumped into each other and, you know, had a conversation, and I went like this, and I wrote down, I'm observing silence. And you'd go, oh, you're observing silence, okay. And then, you know, maybe a couple of weeks later, we bumped into each other, and I wrote down on a piece of paper, I'm going to break my silence soon. What would you think? You would think, oh, she's going to speak. She's going to go like, blah, blah, blah. She's going to say something. Nobody would think, oh, that means something cosmic. No, it means you're going to speak. So we all thought Baba was going to speak. We all thought he was going to say something. He'd written, when I speak the word of words, it'll, you know. So it was going to be some kind of thing when he spoke. I mean, something's going to happen. I mean, you just want to be around when that when he speaks that word, because it's going to be something. So the breaking of his silence was like this, it was referred to routinely and frequently. He's going to break his silence. When's he going to break his silence? He's going to break his silence. He's going to break his silence. It's going to be a big thing. It's going to be like, and then he dies. What? But what about the breaking of the silence? Did he say something right before he died? Did anybody hear him say something right before he died? I mean, it was like trying to piece that together, trying to make that like what? And I don't think it was just because I was a child. Everyone had the same thinking. There were people who were so confused that it challenged their belief that he was the Avatar. It was that big. There were plenty of Indians who said, well, he can't be who he said he was, because he said he was going to break his silence, and he's dead, and he didn't, and so he can't be who he said he was. Plenty of people said that. So when the Mandali, like fast forward 20 years, and somebody is sitting in Mandali Hall, and they go, so Erich, what do you think Baba meant when he said he was going to break his silence? Whatever Erich says or said was not what he thought in 1968 or 67 or 66 or 65. All the Mandali had to come to their own understanding of what that meant. They were just as surprised at this. And if you don't think so, you're just wrong. That's what it was. It would have made no sense at all for any of the Mandali, while Baba was alive, to go, well, he says he's going to break his silence, and he doesn't really mean he's going to speak. It means something totally esoteric. No, nobody would have thought that. So that's something that I find very difficult to communicate to people nowadays, because most everybody in the Baba community now is somebody who came to Baba after he died, and they have no idea what it meant to be expecting Meher Baba to speak physically any day now. He said, I'll break my silence in 1960. It's in print. He said, I'm going to break my silence on this date. So we were all just like, anyway, so I see my dad crying. What's going to happen? And then we received message that, the Darshan's going to continue. Well, okay. And some people said, if Meher Baba's if he's dead, why go? Plenty of people said that. If he's dead, why go? So a lot of people didn't go. But a lot of people did. And I will say that going to India was one of the most significant events that ever happened in my life. I was 11, and talking about this makes me, it's exciting. Yeah, it was the most significant event of my life, I would say. It was the first time I had seen more people without shoes than with shoes. And poverty of a level that I had never even imagined, obviously. And a completely different way of being in a normal life than what I knew in America as a normal life. And it just opened my mind up to how the world was filled with lots of people who lived life completely differently than me. And I consider that to be such a fabulous, it was such a gift. And it made me open-minded. And it made me see that what people are is not what I think people are, just who I know in America. People are this thing called people. And what's the people part of the people is different from all the stuff around the people, which I don't think people realize that they think. You know, you live in America and you think, well, this is the way people are. But it's not the way people are. It's a lot of the culture and the stuff and the, you know, the media. Anyway, so I met many of the Mondali who had a lot on their mind. Interacting with an 11-year-old was not top on their list of things to do. So my brother, myself, Christopher, Leslie, what was Smith? What was
Shelley, Craig and Louise.
Shelley Smith.
Shelley, thank you, Shelley, and I think there were a couple other kids I can't remember, but those
The Euchers.
The Euchers children, yeah, that's right. I don't know why I didn't remember them so much.
We stayed in maybe different hotels. I'm not.
Or maybe they were on a different trip or something.
Yeah, no, there were 2 hotels and they broke us up.
We were in different hotels. Oh, and my dad insisted on us staying at the hotel he stayed at in 1962, which was the least sanitary of all the hotels, and so we all got violently ill. Thanks so much. And it was just not a great hotel. It had gone downhill since '62. But anyway, you know, I saw things like a snake charmer, an actual snake charmer with a mongoose. You know, it was like fascinating for a kid. And Guru Prasad, and then going to Maharazad and going to the tomb. And, you know, it's a collage of memories. I can't put them in any order. You know, I don't have a memory like, well, we did this at Tuesday at 3 o'clock. I can't remember that. But I remember a lot of people getting drunk on the plane. And I felt when I came back, my whole life was changed. I was a completely different person, and nothing was ever going to be the same. And it was a lot because of India, and it was also because Meher Baba became more real. He was not just these books or pictures. You know, there was an actual tomb there, and there were actual people who, you know, were with him. So we moved around a lot. We moved around, I'm going to say, close to 20 times before I was 16. I have a list somewhere, but honestly, looking at the list does not make me feel cheery, so I don't look at the list. But I spent the time making the list at one point because I just really needed to know. And then I became a teenager and became rebellious and just did my own thing. And graduated from college and tried to have my own work life and career. I focused on work. I was not really interested in being married and having children. Never had that. Gee, I wonder why. Never had that urge or priority. Never was on my list of things to do. But throughout, I guess because there was so much change and so much instability in my growing up life, the only thing that was constant was Meher Baba. And for me, Meher Baba was the books that I knew. I wasn't able to really make relationships with people who were involved with Meher Baba. So for me to have Meher Baba in my life, it was the books. I will tell you right now, when you mention Meher Baba in 3rd grade, it does not go over well. You better keep it to yourself if you're in 3rd grade and you follow an Eastern master and you believe in reincarnation. Take a tip. So for me, it was, don't let anyone know that you're involved with Meher Baba. I did not, it took me a lot of effort to overcome the secretiveness that my grade school years instilled in me. It took a lot of effort to overcome that. And I made the effort because Meher Baba said that he wanted his message to be shared. And it was a personal struggle for me to overcome that. But I feel that I have. I feel that I have. And not just recently, long ago. And so wherever I moved, I would always get in contact with the Baba community. And it seemed like I was always about 8 to 12 years younger than everybody else in the Baba community. They were all like this very tight demographic of age and background and, interests, and it was just very weird. So, and they were very clubby. And they didn't really try and invite other people to become part of the Baba community. They wanted to kind of just be clubby. And they all kind of came to Baba around the same time. In this, like 68, 69, early 70s. But I felt strongly about communicating Meher Baba's message, so I would always be involved. I'd always get myself involved with publications or events. And I'd help organize events. Let's have more events. Let's invite more people. Let's make a publication. Let's send it out. And I received various amounts of support on that. The bigger the group, the more they would be involved with that. But generally that was not the case, though. It was just a small group of people who wanted to know each other, and not many other people, and they didn't really invite anybody else in. They just had a little meeting, and so I moved around different places for work, or just because I was bored where I was, or thought there was something else more interesting somewhere else in terms of work. And so I, would go to different Baba communities and get to know the people there, and get to know the people there, and get to know the people there. So as a result, I ended up knowing like a lot of Baba people. And so I look now around and I go, yeah, I've known you for 30 years, I've known you for 27 years, But I must say that I have not done a concerted effort to try and do public events myself. I always, was associated with a Baba group and tried to do public events through that group. So, but recently, I asked the circle of friends in 2018, which is what, I think it was about, so it was almost exactly 3 years ago. December of 2018, I just got a wild hair, and I said, I think we need to do an ad in the newspaper about Meher Baba. And I went to the circle of friends and I said, will you help with this? And then I went to the Meher Spiritual Center and I said, would you help with this? And both went like this. Absolutely not. And I went like, huh? I didn't get it, but they were absolutely petrified and vehement that I not put their information anywhere on this ad. Under no circumstances, no. To this day, I don't get it. But there was one person who was so sweet and wonderful, who's sitting here right now, who thought it was a good idea and helped give the money for it. That's my special friend right over there. Anyway, so I put this ad together, and I thought, this just has to happen. We just have to do this. So I contacted the Sun News, and they were having a special because it was the Sunday papers leading up to Christmas are, of course, the papers that have the most advertising in them. So they're really thick, and they give all these kind of special advertising deals to get as many advertisers as they can get. So they have a special going on, quarter-page ad for like $250 or something like that, which is, that's like a big-ass ad, And I said, yeah, give me one of those. I'll take one of those. And so my other wonderful friend who's right here, so the person who helped fund it was Judy Mangold, and the person who helped design it was Catherine Cox. So Catherine came up with a wonderful design for what the ad should look like, far superior than what I did, which I thought was great, but Catherine was like, no, and redesigned it, and hers was beautiful. The way she did it was just great. And I said, I sat in my living room and I just said, Meher Baba, you just guide me into what should go into this ad. What should it be about? How should I put it together? What are we going to do? And I had a little thought and I said, okay, we're going to put this, I took that little quote from there and that section from there and this section from there and knitted it all together. And I said, I think that's just fine. That just is fine. And so Catherine gave me the layout for it, and I printed it, and I sent it over to the Sun News. And for stuff like that, you have to put paid advertisement on it if it's text, so the readership doesn't think it's the newspaper writing that. You have to put paid advertisement. So it said paid advertisement on the top, and I thought, oh, they're gonna bury this thing. This is going to get buried somewhere in, bottom left corner of some page, deep in this these large issues that, the whole month of December, they have multiple sections that are fat, a lot of newspaper. And so one of the things you cannot purchase space. You cannot purchase the space, a specific space in a newspaper. That's just the way that things are. Unless you purchase the center spread, and you will pay. But you can purchase a center spread, or you just purchase an ad, and they will put that ad where they think it fits best. You can't say where the ad will be. If you can, that's a new development. I don't know about it. And it's never been like that. So I thought, yeah, they're going to bury it. So the week of the newspaper comes out, I get the newspaper, and I can't find the ad anywhere. I'm looking, I can't find it. And then I realize it's on page 2. Top left. There's the center spread, and then there's page 2, top left. That's like the best placement you could get. Page 2, top left. And I thought, oh my God, how is this possible? How did I get page 2, top left? So I called up. This is like fantastic. Or no, I think I emailed. And the ad person said, our production department loved the ad. They loved it. Why was everyone so afraid that this ad would cause some kind of bad thing to happen? Why? It's just baffling to me. Why was everyone so afraid? The production department, Sally and Billy and Susie, who don't know bupkis about Meher Baba, loved it. They gave it page 2. So, that's kind of, that little story right there tells a bit about my relationship with the Baba community. I just don't get it sometimes. I just don't get it. And,
It also tells you your relationship with Baba, because you got page 2.
well, I mean, I've...
Community.
What's that?
Not because of the community, but Baba
Yeah.
gave you page 2.
Yeah. Well, he wanted that to be on page 2. I mean, you know. And it's a beautiful ad. And I'm so glad that I did it, because now I have something that I'm talking to people about Meher Baba, I go, here, I can just give them that, because I know they'll love it, because it's lovely. Anyway, so growing up in a Baba family, what else? I've seen a lot of people come, and I've seen a lot of people go. That's something about growing up in a Baba family.
You said that you went to India when you were 11.
And 11, yes.
Yeah. So I know that you've been in Myrtle Beach and in Woodstock. What years? What ages?
I moved from upstate New York to Myrtle Beach in the 70s. The 70s. And at Myrtle Beach at that time, you could not get a job doing anything about 7 months out of the year. I mean, it's not like you could only get a crap job. You couldn't get a job. There just was nothing. And so everybody would work for the hotels, everybody in the Baba community that I knew would work for the hotels and then got on unemployment for 7 months and then work for the hotels again. Rewinding, when I was a little kid, my parents would come down to the Meher Spiritual Center to visit, and there was no one here ever. Whenever we came to the Baba Center, I mean, maybe it was because they chose times that were not peak times or something, but I don't think that was it. I think it was just that there was no one coming to the center. I mean, it was before Jeff Wolverton came. What's his name? Eaton was still here. He was still the caretaker, and he took care of the center. You know, I mean, he was constantly working, constantly busy, and it was a lot wilder. You know, it wasn't so manicured, like everything under the trees wasn't nice and open. You know, it was full of brush, you know. And it had a sense of quietness that it doesn't have now for me. I look back now and I realize that the atmosphere was as if he was going to come any minute now. As if he was going to visit any minute now. It was like being taken care of for his visit. That was my sense of it. It was not a place that was made as a retreat for the general public, including those people who had an interest in Meher Baba, to come and visit and stay at. That's not what it was. It was a place that was for Meher Baba's visiting. I mean, I didn't have that thought at the time, but I look back at what my experience was of it, and it was not of it being a retreat center for the general public. That's not what it was. And when we visited, it was like quiet, completely quiet, and there was nobody fussing around doing things. It was just completely quiet. And of course, we would always visit with Christopher and Leslie and Lynn and Phyllis because they lived on the center. And I just don't even know what that would be like. I just really don't know. That's a whole nother story. A whole nother story. But so let me rewind about that little section. When Meher Baba was so in the when did you move there?
67.
67. So in the mid-60s, when my family and the Otts, Lynn and Phyllis, Christopher and Leslie, Betsy and Mimi, were up in Woodstock and corresponding with Meher Baba, having meetings. And my dad had come back in 1962 from the East-West Gathering and stopped doing drugs. So, on the straight and narrow. And my mom, who was the kind of person who said, let's get a book, we can do that. I mean, she was that kind of person. Definitely can do. Adrian, was she a can-do person or what? The can-do person.
Very inspiring.
Inspiring. That's your words and mine. So she was like, she read The New Humanity, okay, in the discourses, and she said, we've got to make a community for the new humanity. Darn it. We're the new humanity, and we're going to make a community for the new humanity. And it's going to be on the Meher Spiritual Center, and it's going to be like a commune, and it's going to be peace, love, dove, and pear trees, and organic gardening. And it's just going to be heaven on earth. Everyone's going to get along. And, oh yeah, it's going to be great. It's going to be great. Organic gardening, for sure. And so, well, let's write Meher Baba a letter and let's see if he's on board with this too. So they shot off a letter to Meher Baba. We think that we should live on the center and have a community of people loving God and living the new humanity. And, you know, I don't have a copy of that letter, but I'm sure it's in India somewhere. I'm sure they have it. I'm sure they look at it routinely and go, ha ha ha, you know. But anyway, so shot that letter off, but I'm pretty sure, maybe I was there, maybe I wasn't, but they had discussions with the Otts about it, and they were all on board for this. I'm pretty sure they were all on board. They were like, absolutely, yes. And sounded like a great idea. Let's do it. And Phyllis, on her own, had gone to India to check Meher Baba out. And, you know, so Phyllis had met Meher Baba, and my dad had met Meher Baba. My mom and dad had met Meher Baba in 1958, I think. And then Lynn and Phyllis went together to India, what year?
65.
In 65. So, you know, all four of them had met Meher Baba, and they were like, we are making the new humanity on the center with organic gardening. And
We were going to have a commune together, the
Yeah.
Rileys and the Otts, and we even looked at a farm in Woodstock. And I remember visiting it, and I was excited.
yeah, oh gosh, it was so exciting. What Chris just said was that the Otts and the Rileys were big into having a commune, and we even looked at a farm in the Woodstock area, and it was extremely exciting. You tell that to a kid, going to be living on a commune.
With another family, with kids.
With other families with kids. We're like,
all over the
oh
place.
yeah! Because we lived way out in the BF nowhere boonies with, you know, the nearest neighbor was, you know, like 1/8 of a mile away or something. because that was the only land they could afford.
But I never knew they were gonna do this on the center.
Oh
I
my
didn't
God!
know that. No.
Oh my God! Oh, it's so true. Absolutely. Oh, totally. So, shot that letter off to Mayor Baba, and lo and behold, get a letter back saying, "Sounds okay to me." Sure. Sounds like a good idea. So, my parents gone down. I don't know if your parents did, but all I know is, my parents went down. My dad walking on the center with Elizabeth, and Elizabeth saying that would be a good place for a house, and whatever, wherever you, because she was on page with Mayor Baba. So if Mayor Baba said sounds like a good idea to me, it was a good idea to Elizabeth. So looking for a place and to put a house there in the center. So Lynn and Phyllis owned a church and lived in a church. This interesting building that had been a church for, I don't know, a long time. Or no, had been relocated there from the bottom of the Ashokan Reservoir. When the Ashokan Reservoir, which is the main water source still to this day for New York City, the Ashokan Reservoir was the imagination of some genius engineers, but oops, there's a town there. So they had to relocate the town. So they took the church and they took, a lot of buildings. They didn't take the cemetery. They took all of the cemetery stones. They didn't take the bodies. So all the bodies are still under the reservoir, but all the gravestones are in a little area behind that church. So it's just a little town that they basically destroyed. And so that church was from...
I never knew that.
Yeah, I know. Isn't that interesting? So Lynn and Phyllis owned this church, which is like kind of a very cool and hip thing to do, is like have your bedroom at the nave of the church, that's kind of hip, they were Lynn and Phyllis were definitely cool people. They were the cooler people. My parents were a little less cool than that. So anyway, they put their house on the market and it sold like that. Like it just sold like that. So, because it was like
When
this...
they decided to move to the center, it's instantly sold.
It instantly sold, exactly. They said, my parents, and Lynn and Phyllis said, so we're going to move to the center. Let's put our homes on the market. Lynn and Phyllis put their home on the market, and like the next day it sold. They had to move. My parents put their house on the market, and it didn't sell. And it didn't sell, and it didn't sell, and it didn't sell. Like, hello, lower your price, but whatever. It didn't sell, and it didn't sell. And the Otts had to move. Their house sold. So the Otts moved down onto the center. And I think at that point, Elizabeth realized what this could mean, because there were children involved. This is a big thing. And so Elizabeth communicated with Mayor Baba about this. And true to form, Mayor Baba, when she said, I don't know if this is such a great idea, Baba, Mayor Baba wrote back, well, that sounds reasonable to me. When somebody suggested that people live on the center and have a commune, he said, yeah, that sounds good. And then when Elizabeth said she didn't think that was a good idea, he said, well, okay. And so the gates closed. And my parents were not able to move on to the center. And I can tell you, that was a craw in my dad's throat. Not so much my mom, but a craw in my dad's throat. I mean, he and I had conversations about it 5 years ago. And he was still like, had an issue with that happened, about that Elizabeth did that. It was a big deal. So that thing never happened. And the Otts and the Rileys were split. So we were tight. And then we were split because we were living in upstate New York and then down in Myrtle Beach. And I'm going to go on the record right now and say, so glad it happened to you and not me. Oh my God. If I think that it was rude for a river of people to come through our home, basically use us selfishly and eat our food, never contribute anything,
And not
I cannot even imagine what it was like for you. People coming into your home thinking that they're owed tea and cookies. Like that's what you're supposed to give them. I mean, like a level of rudeness that's entitlement. I can't even imagine it. I can't even imagine it. I would have popped them and put a bar on my door. I mean, honestly. But to your mom's credit, I'm going to say 1,000 gallons of tea were made by your mom and served. All right, it's time to go. But anyway, yeah.
Have part two.
Yeah,
Pardon?
we'll have part-
Can we continue this in part?
I think it's part one is it. There's no more else.
Can I ask a few questions?
Sure.
When you came back from India, you said everything had kind of changed for you. All
Yes.
of a sudden, Baba was, even though he had passed, there had been a big change in you. He was no longer just books.
Or pictures on the wall.
Pictures. Can you, I know that can be abstract and personal, but can you explain a little bit more detail, fill that in, of what that
Well, looking back
change
now, other than the cultural awareness thing that happened, which could not be undone. You know, I had a view of the world that no one in my grade school had. You know, I was like now of a different mind and I couldn't, undo my thinking. But coming back from India, from the Darshan, 69 Darshan, there was no one to give orders anymore. Like we had received an order from Meher Baba a few years prior where he had said, I want everyone to say the prayer of repentance and the Master's prayer every day for like 60 days or something like, I can't remember how long it was. So we had received orders from Meher Baba to do things. There was now no one to give orders. So what is your relationship with Meher Baba? And it makes you, without even thinking about it, I thought about it. Without thinking what I was thinking, that's what came into my head. Like, well, who is Meher Baba to me? When he's a guy in India that we're going to go visit, that's who he is. But when he's dead, who is he? And if he is who he said he was, and it never occurred to me that he wasn't. When I talk with people who are Christian and they say, how can you believe that he's the avatar? I say, it's as impossible for me to imagine that he is not who he said he was, as it is for you to imagine that he is. It's just as hard. But yeah, that was it. Who was he? I had to think about that. Who is Meher Baba now? Who is Meher Baba? And
That was going to be my next question, was just because you grew up hearing and knowing a Baba and your parents following, and then you got pictures on the wall, when was there a feeling that it was like, he is who he said he is?
I never didn't have that feeling. So that's why when people, there's how you came to Baba stories.
Right.
And I must say, if there's anything that I have a slight resentment about, it's that those people think that that's the only way to have a relationship with Meher Baba, is that you have a story about how you came to Baba. I don't have that story. My story is growing up in a Baba family. If what you're saying is, was there a magical moment I did not have a magical moment. I don't think a magical moment was necessary because, like, there was also, Meher Baba sent a message out. I want everyone to write me a note. Which is like a really great thing if you think about it, because if you write him a note, then that note's going to be there. And later in your life, you can go see that note and you can know that you wrote him a note and he read it. That doesn't occur to a 9-year-old to think, gosh, if I write him a note now when I get older, I'll know that he read it. You know, 9-year-olds don't think that way. 9-year-olds don't write letters. I mean, maybe some do, but I didn't. So, Meher Baba wants everyone to write him a note. You know, people wrote all kinds of things. My brother, who was 3.5 years younger than me, wrote a note. Meher Baba loves me and I love Meher Baba and Meher Baba's next to me. That was his note. You know, what was he? He was like...
And it was in the family letters.
And it got printed in the family letters, yeah. So, you know, like just a note. What was my note about? Well, I had, you know, at age 8, I had already begun reading the discourses. And so I wrote my understanding of God as infinity at age 8. I'm writing this. And how do I know that? Because Erich gave it to me and said, do you remember writing this? I was like, I wrote that? Anyway, so yeah, it was very much about the words for me. And the more I read Meher Baba's words, the more it's so beautiful that he gave the how it works, the truth of how it works. We can know. We can know.
Well, you also met some pretty incredible people, because they're incredible to us too.
I can't hear you. Say it again.
Okay, you also would have met some really incredible people, because they're incredible to us too.
Well, I meet incredible people like you all the time.
But I'm also looking at, like when you went to India, you went to India for the first time, and you would have gone later. Who did you connect with? I mean, there's
11-year-olds don't connect with people. Well, I don't know.
There later I put in too. So you saw Mara.
Yeah, Mara was just coming out, and she wanted to meet the kids. She wanted to meet. Did you meet Mara? I think you did. You just don't remember.
No, I didn't.
You didn't?
No, I have perfect memory of that. No, I did not.
And you didn't meet her?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, I met her, and she.
You know, I'm a boy.
Oh, I guess that would be, yeah. That would have been different, yeah. So, yeah. So, I met Meher, and she was very sweet. But that's another thing. The cult of Mehera. There was no cult of Mehera before Meher Baba died. Mehera was never mentioned. She was not on the landscape. I mean, maybe if you were Indian, you know, and maybe because, you know, she was in India and Indian and she had friends and, you know, relatives and, you know, people connected like that, and they were able to go to meet Meher Baba, and you know, he gave darshans all over India and all that. But she was not on the landscape. We did not think about Mehera. She was not mentioned or thought about.
Having lived with a Parsi family that, you know, went way back, they said, she said, I don't want to say who it is, but she said that also, that before Baba died, no, Mehera was not.
No, there was no cult of Mehera. There was no cult of Mehera. And here's the reason the cult of Mehera began. Very natural. There's Meher Baba. When he's alive, why would you look anywhere else to anyone? Why would you hang out, follow, and hang on every word that Erich said when Meher Baba's there? You wouldn't. I mean, unless you're in India and you think that Erich is a saint because he's a disciple, and then you want, I mean, the Indian people have a different way of looking at the mandali than we do. But you wouldn't be focusing your attention on Erich or Mehera when Meher Baba's there. That's who you'd be focusing on.
Christina, I said this to you yesterday, or
What?
today. What a lot of Baba lovers don't realize about you and me
Yeah,
is that we were Baba lovers when he was alive,
yeah,
and they weren't.
yeah. It
The-
seems obvious, but yes, it's
Yeah.
true.
So when they first came to Baba, they immediately met disciples.
That's
You
right.
meet Elizabeth and Kitty.
That's right.
And so you kind of prioritize them, and this one's very important. And
Right.
this Erich, ooh, and this is Mira.
Yeah.
But that's not a thing.
Yeah.
If you are a Baba lover when he's alive.
Yep. That's
Um,
exactly what I'm saying.
yeah.
So when Meher Baba was alive, you wouldn't hover around Erich, or you wouldn't hover around
Well, it just
these people.
wasn't a thing.
There would be no reason to do that. So what happens, the avatar dies,
Yeah.
you want to know about the avatar, it's natural to want to talk to the people who met him. It's natural. And when somebody says, oh, his beloved was this woman Mehera,
Yeah.
it's natural that you then think she is somebody who's worthy of adoration. It's natural. It's what's unnatural is to say, well, that's too bad that he died. I think I'll read his books. That's not natural. It's natural to want to, because reading has come quite late for human beings. Normally, it's been word of mouth and in-person stories for like 150,000 years. So people naturally gravitate towards those people who can tell them stories about the avatar. And then you hang on the every word of those people who are telling the stories.
But wrap it up.
That's it.
All right. Jay Bob, wonderful talk.
Yay!